The paper hit the floor in pieces. 11 years old, standing in front of 23 kids who just watched his truth get ripped apart. The teacher smiled. Not the kind smile. The other kind. We don't lie in this classroom. His shoes had holes in them. That's what she noticed first. Not his words. His shoes. My father is a 4-star general. He said it again. Quieter this time. She didn't believe him. No one did. And for the next 6 hours, he would sit in that hallway. Alone. Waiting for someone to prove he wasn't crazy. But here's what no one knew. 60 miles away, a man with 4 stars on his shoulders had just been handed a phone. And the look on his face when he heard what happened to his son? It wasn't confusion. It was fury. But before I tell you what happened when that general arrived, do me a favor. Hit subscribe and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. New York? London? Lagos? Sydney? Let me know you're here. Now, let's go back to where it all started. There are moments in life when everything you know to be true becomes a lie in someone else's mouth. This is one of those moments. The classroom smelled like old textbooks and dry erase markers. 23 kids sat in rows. The hum of the air conditioner mixed with pencil scratches. It was a Tuesday. Nothing felt important yet. Mrs. Patterson stood at the front, reading assignments out loud. One by one, kids shared what their parents did for work. Accountant, nurse, manager at the grocery store, mechanic. The answers came easy because no one doubted them. Then she called his name. Malik. He stood up. 11 years old. Neat haircut. Clean shirt tucked in. The kind of kid who said, "Yes, ma'am," without being reminded. He held the paper in both hands and read the sentence he'd written the night before. My father is a 4-star general in the United States Army. The room didn't explode. It didn't gasp. It just shifted. Mrs. Patterson tilted her head. Not like she was curious. Like she was already deciding. She smiled. The kind of smile adults give when they think you're confused. A 4-star general, she repeated slowly. Malik nodded. She walked toward him. Her heels clicked on the tile. She stopped right in front of his desk and held out her hand. Let me see that. He gave her the paper. She read it. Then she read it again. Then she looked at him. Not at his face. At his shoes. Old sneakers. The kind you get from the discount rack. One lace was frayed. She looked back at the paper. And then she tore it. Not in half. Into pieces. Small pieces. She let them fall onto his desk like confetti. The room went silent. Malik, she said softly, like she was being kind, we don't lie in this classroom. He didn't move. My dad is a general, he said again. Quieter this time. She sighed. The kind of sigh that said she'd seen this before. That said she knew better. Sweetheart, I've been teaching for 26 years. I know what a general's family looks like. I know how they talk. I know where they live. She gestured around the room. And I know what kids do when they want to feel special. Malik's fingers curled against the edge of his desk. I'm not lying. Mrs. Patterson's smile faded. Then why? She said, her voice sharper now. Are you wearing shoes with holes in them? Why does your file say your father works for the government in logistics? Why have I never seen him at a single school event? Malik opened his mouth, then closed it. Because how do you explain security clearances to someone who's already decided you're making things up? How do you explain that your dad can't always tell you where he is? How do you explain that some jobs don't fit on a school form? A girl 2 rows back raised her hand. Mrs. Patterson, I've seen his dad pick him up before. He was in uniform. Mrs. Patterson didn't even look at her. Lots of people wear uniforms, Shanice. That doesn't make them generals. She turned back to Malik. You're going to the office. He stood up. No tears. No yelling. He just picked up his backpack and walked toward the door. And that's what made it worse. Because when a kid doesn't cry, doesn't fight back, doesn't beg to be believed, it means they've already learned that no one will listen anyway. The door closed behind him. Mrs. Patterson smoothed her blouse and turned back to the class. Let's continue, she said, like nothing had happened. But something had. Because across town, a phone was ringing. And on the other end, A man in a uniform covered in ribbons and stars was about to hear that his son had been called a liar. In 6 hours, this classroom would never be the same. But right now, Malik sat alone in the hallway, waiting for the truth to arrive. Mrs. Patterson didn't feel like a villain. That's the thing people don't understand about moments like this. She felt like a teacher doing her job. She walked back to her desk and sat down. Her coffee was still warm. The lesson plan was still on schedule. Everything was fine, except it wasn't. Because in the hallway, Malik sat with his back against the cold wall, knees pulled to his chest, waiting for someone to believe him. Inside the classroom, Mrs. Patterson addressed the students like nothing had happened. "Let's talk about honesty," she said. 22 kids stared at her. "I've been teaching for 26 years. I've seen thousands of students walk through that door. And you know what I've learned?" She paused. Kids want to be special. They want to stand out. And sometimes, when life feels ordinary, they create stories that make them feel bigger. A boy in the third row raised his hand. "But what if he's telling the truth?" Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Patient. Calm. Then where's the proof? If his father was really a 4-star general, wouldn't we know? Wouldn't there be signs?" She stood up and walked toward the window. A 4-star general commands thousands of soldiers. They live on military bases. They travel with security. They don't drive beat-up cars and drop their kids off in the parent loop like everyone else. Her voice was steady, confident. "I'm not saying Malik is a bad kid. I'm saying he got confused. Maybe his dad told him a story once and he believed it. Maybe he misunderstood what his father actually does." Another hand went up. "Shanice again. But I saw his dad in uniform, with patches and everything." Mrs. Patterson turned to her slowly. "Shanice, my brother-in-law works on a base. He wears a uniform too. That doesn't make him a general." She walked back to the front of the room. "There are ranks, levels. A 4-star general is one of the highest positions in the entire military. There are only a handful of them in the whole country." She let that sink in. "And you're telling me one of them lives in our district? Sends his kid to our school?" In those shoes, the room stayed quiet. Because when an adult uses logic like that, when they've been teaching longer than you've been alive, when they sound so sure, doubt starts to creep in. Even if you wanted to believe Malik, a part of you started to wonder. Mrs. Patterson sat back down. "I'm not punishing him. I'm protecting him. Because if I let him keep telling that story, other kids will start asking questions. They'll make fun of him. They'll call him a liar to his face." She picked up her pen. "It's better to stop it now, to help him understand that the truth matters." A quiet voice came from the back. "What if you're wrong?" Mrs. Patterson didn't even look up. "I'm not." And that was it. No anger, no cruelty, just certainty. The kind of certainty that doesn't need proof because experience is proof enough. She'd taught for decades. She'd seen patterns. She knew how the world worked. And in her world, kids like Malik didn't have fathers like that. But outside, in the hallway, Malik pulled a small photo from his pocket. It was creased, folded too many times, but you could still see it clearly. A man in uniform, 4 stars on his shoulder, standing in front of a flag, and next to him, a younger Malik, smiling. He stared at it for a long time. Then he put it back in his pocket, because he'd tried showing it once before, at his old school, and the teacher said it was photoshopped. So he stopped trying. He learned that some people don't want proof. They want to be right. Inside the classroom, Mrs. Patterson checked the clock. 40 minutes until the principal would call Malik's parents. 40 minutes until this whole thing would be cleared up. She took a sip of her coffee, and she smiled, because in her mind, she'd already won. But across town, a black SUV with tinted windows and government plates had just left a secured facility, and the man inside wasn't smiling. The principal's office smelled like air freshener and old carpet. Malik sat in the chair across from Mr. Henderson's desk, too big for him. His feet barely touched the ground. Mr. Henderson was typing. The keyboard clicks were the only sound in the room. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. After a minute, he stopped typing and leaned back in his chair. "Malik," he said gently, Do you know why you're here? Malik nodded. Mrs. Patterson says you told the class something that wasn't true. It is true. Mr. Henderson sighed. Not the frustrated kind. The kind that said he'd had this conversation before. I pulled your file. He turned his monitor so Malik could see it. It says here your father works for the government. Department of Defense. Logistics Coordinator. He tapped the screen. That's what it says. Not general. Logistics Coordinator. Malik's voice was quiet but firm. He can't put his real job on school forms. It's classified. Mr. Henderson smiled. The same smile Mrs. Patterson had used. Classified, he repeated softly. He folded his hands on the desk. Malik, I know you watch a lot of movies. I know kids your age love superheroes and spies and all that. But this is real life. I'm not making it up. Then why doesn't your file say general? Because he's not allowed to. Malik. Mr. Henderson's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through anyway. If your father was really a 4-star general, the school would know. The district would know. We'd have security protocols. We'd have paperwork. He leaned forward. Do you know how many 4-star generals there are in the entire United States military? Malik shook his head. Less than 40. In the whole country. He let that sit. And you're telling me one of them lives here? Sends his kid to a public school with no security? No escorts? No nothing. Malik looked down at his hands. He tries to keep things normal for me. Mr. Henderson's face softened. I get it. I really do. Kids want their parents to be heroes. And I'm sure your dad is a good man. But sometimes we stretch the truth because we want people to see us a certain way. I'm not stretching anything. Then why haven't we ever met him? Parent-teacher conferences? School events? Open house. He travels. A lot. I'm sure he does. The way he said it made it clear he didn't believe a word. Mr. Henderson opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. Last year, a student told everyone his uncle played for the NBA. Turned out his uncle coached a rec league team. He closed the folder. Kids exaggerate. It's normal. But we have to teach you that honesty matters more than being impressive. Malik's jaw tightened. I'm not exaggerating. Mr. Henderson stood up and walked around the desk. He sat on the edge, closer to Malik now. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to call your parents. We're going to have a conversation. And we're going to move forward. He put a hand on Malik's shoulder. No one's in trouble. But you need to understand that making up stories about your family isn't okay. I didn't make it up. Mr. Henderson walked back to his desk and picked up the phone. We'll see. He dialed the number listed in the file. It rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. Mr. Henderson left a message. Professional, polite, but with an edge that said he already knew what the answer would be. He hung up. We'll try again in an hour. Malik didn't respond. Because what was the point? No one was listening. They'd already decided. Mr. Henderson sat back down and returned to his computer. You can wait outside my office until your next class. Malik stood up and walked to the door. As he reached for the handle, Mr. Henderson spoke again. Malik. He turned. Your dad does important work. I'm sure of it. You don't have to make him bigger than he already is. Malik didn't answer. He just left. And as the door closed behind him, Mr. Henderson shook his head and muttered to himself. 4-star general. Unbelievable. But 60 miles away, in a briefing room with maps on every wall and screens showing live satellite feeds, a 4-star general was being handed a phone. And the look on his face when he heard the message? It wasn't confusion. It was fury. Time moves differently when you're waiting to be proven right. Every minute feels like 10. Every hour feels like a day. Malik sat on the bench outside the principal's office. Other kids walked past. Some stared. Some whispered. One kid laughed. He didn't look up. The clock on the wall ticked. 9:47. His father's phone went straight to voicemail again. Mr. Henderson had tried 3 more times. Each time, the principal's confidence grew a little stronger. Because in his mind, the math was simple. If the dad was really a general, he'd answer. If the story was real, there'd be proof by now. But there was nothing. Just a kid on a bench. and a phone that wouldn't ring. 10:15. Mrs. Patterson walked past. She didn't say anything. She just glanced at him with that same look. The one that said, "I told you so." Malik pulled his knees up to his chest. Inside the office, Mr. Henderson made another call, this time to Malik's mother. It rang 4 times. Then someone picked up. "Hello." Her voice sounded rushed, like she was in the middle of something. "Mrs. Brooks? This is Principal Henderson at Malik's school." A pause. "Is he okay?" "He's fine. Physically. But we need to talk about something that happened in class today." "What happened?" Malik told his teacher that his father is a 4-star general. Silence. Then a long exhale. "And?" Mr. Henderson hesitated. "Mrs. Brooks, we just want to make sure we're all on the same page. The file lists your husband as a logistics coordinator. We're trying to help Malik understand the importance of honesty." Another pause. Longer this time. "My husband is at work. He'll call you when he can. I've tried his number several times. He's in a meeting. A meeting that lasts all morning?" Her voice changed. Colder now. "Yes." Mr. Henderson leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Brooks, I'm not trying to accuse anyone of anything. I just think it would help if we could all sit down and talk. Clear this up." "There's nothing to clear up. My son told the truth." "With all due respect, ma'am, if your husband really held that rank, we'd have documentation. Security measures. Something." She didn't respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. Too calm. "You'll hear from him." And then she hung up. Mr. Henderson stared at the phone for a moment. Then he wrote a note in Malik's file. "Mother defensive. Avoiding direct answers. Likely protecting child from embarrassment." He closed the file. 11:10. Malik was still on the bench. A teacher walked by and gave him a sympathetic look. The kind you give a kid who got caught doing something wrong, but you feel bad for them anyway. He hated that look. 11:43. The office secretary brought him a juice box. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" He nodded. She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. She just patted his shoulder and walked away. The clock kept ticking. 12:05. Lunch period started. Kids flooded the hallways. Laughter. Shouting. The normal chaos of a school day. But Malik stayed on the bench, waiting. 12:30. Mr. Henderson stepped out of his office. He looked at Malik, then at the clock. "Still nothing," he said quietly. Not to Malik, just to himself. He went back inside, and that's when it happened. The moment the school decided the case was closed. Because if 3 hours had passed and no general had shown up, no 4-star officer had stormed through the doors demanding answers, then it was obvious. The kid had lied. Mrs. Patterson walked past again. This time she stopped. "Malik," she said softly, "when you're ready to apologize, we can all move on." He looked up at her. "I don't have anything to apologize for." She shook her head. Disappointed, not surprised. "That's what makes this so sad." She walked away. The clock hit 12:45. And that's when Malik heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Deep. Rhythmic. Getting louder. Helicopter blades. Not close, but close enough. He stood up. Other kids noticed too. They ran to the windows. Mr. Henderson came out of his office. "What's going on?" A teacher pointed outside. 2 black SUVs had just pulled into the parking lot. No markings. Tinted windows. Government plates. The helicopter hovered overhead for a moment. Then it banked and disappeared. The SUVs stopped in front of the main entrance. Doors opened. Men in suits stepped out first. Earpieces. Scanning the area. And then, a man in uniform stepped out of the second vehicle. For stars on his shoulder. Ribbons across his chest. And a face that looked exactly like Malik's. Just older. The hallway went silent. Mr. Henderson's face went pale. Mrs. Patterson froze in the doorway. And Malik? He just stood there, waiting for them to realize what they'd done. 20 minutes before the SUVs arrived, Mrs. Patterson made a decision. She was going to fix this. Not quietly, not in private, in front of everyone. Because in her mind, this wasn't just about one lie. It was about setting an example. She walked back into her classroom. The students were supposed to be reading silently, but whispers filled the room instead. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone had an opinion. She clapped her hands twice. Eyes up here. The room went quiet. We're going to talk about what happened this morning. A few kids shifted in their seats. Malik made a choice. He told a story that wasn't true. And instead of admitting it, he doubled down. Shanice raised her hand. But what if? No what ifs, Shanice. We're talking about accountability. Mrs. Patterson walked to the front and wrote a word on the board. Integrity. Does anyone know what this means? A boy in the front row answered. Being honest? Close. It means doing the right thing even when it's hard. Even when no one's watching. Even when it would be easier to lie. She turned back to the class. Malik had a chance to be honest. He didn't take it. Another hand went up. A quiet kid named Troy. What if he wasn't lying? Mrs. Patterson's smile faded. Troy, think about it logically. If his father was really a general, where's the proof? Why hasn't anyone ever seen him? Why does Malik's file say something completely different? Troy didn't have an answer. Exactly. Because sometimes we want something to be true so badly that we convince ourselves it is. She walked toward Malik's empty desk. When Malik comes back, he's going to apologize. Not because I'm forcing him to, but because it's the right thing to do. A girl near the window spoke up. What if he doesn't want to apologize? Mrs. Patterson's voice hardened. Then he'll learn a harder lesson. She looked around the room. This isn't about being mean. This is about teaching you that actions have consequences. That your reputation is built on truth, not fantasy. She tapped Malik's desk. And if you lie about who you are, people stop believing anything you say. Shanice tried again. But I really did see. Shanice. Mrs. Patterson's tone cut through the room like a blade. If you keep defending him, you're part of the problem. Shanice's mouth closed. No one else said a word. Mrs. Patterson walked back to the front of the class. Here's what's going to happen. When Malik returns, he will stand in front of this class. He will apologize. And then we will move on. She crossed her arms. And if any of you decide to make excuses for him, you'll be sitting right next to him. The bell rang. Lunch period. But Mrs. Patterson held up a hand. Not yet. One more thing. She looked directly at Shanice. Loyalty is good, but blind loyalty is dangerous. Don't defend someone just because you like them. Defend them because they deserve it. She paused. Malik doesn't deserve it. Shanice's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say anything. Mrs. Patterson finally nodded. You're dismissed. The kids filed out slowly. No one talked. No one looked at each other. Because they'd just learned a lesson Mrs. Patterson didn't mean to teach. That sometimes the adult in the room isn't right. They're just louder. In the hallway, Troy found Shanice by her locker. You believe him, don't you? She nodded. Me too. Then why didn't you say something? Shanice wiped her eyes. Because she'll just make it worse for him. Troy leaned against the locker. That's messed up. Yeah. They stood there for a moment. Then Troy spoke quietly. What if he's telling the truth and no one believes him? What does that do to a kid? Shanice didn't answer. Because she didn't know. But she was about to find out. Down the hall, Mr. Henderson was walking toward the main entrance. He'd gotten a call from the front desk. Something about visitors. He pushed open the door. And stopped. Because standing in the parking lot, surrounded by men in suits and soldiers in uniform, was a man who looked like he could end someone's career with a single phone call. And judging by the look on his face, he was about to. Mr. Henderson's stomach dropped. Mrs. Patterson appeared beside him. She looked outside. And for the first time all day, she didn't say a word. There's a special kind of loneliness that comes from being right when everyone thinks you're wrong. It's not the loneliness of being abandoned. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people who've already decided who you are. Malik sat on that bench for another 20 minutes after his classmates went to lunch. The hallway was empty now. Just him and the sound of distant cafeteria noise. Laughter. Shouting. Normal kid sounds. But none of it felt like it was meant for him anymore. A teacher he didn't know walked past. She glanced at him, then looked away quickly, like making eye contact would somehow make her responsible for whatever trouble he was in. Another teacher came by 5 minutes later. This one slowed down, almost stopped, but then she kept walking, because getting involved meant taking a side, and no one wants to take the wrong side. Malik pulled out the photo again, the one of him and his father. He stared at it. In the picture, his dad was smiling, proud, one hand on Malik's shoulder, for stars visible on the uniform, clear as day. But it didn't matter, because people don't see what's in front of them. They see what they expect to see. He put the photo back in his pocket. A custodian pushed a mop bucket past. Didn't even look at him. Just another kid in trouble. 12:55. The office door opened. Mr. Henderson stepped out. He had his phone in his hand. He'd just tried calling Malik's father again. Straight to voicemail. He looked at Malik. Not with anger. Not with disappointment. With pity. "You hungry?" he asked. Malik shook his head. "You should eat something." "I'm fine." Mr. Henderson sighed. "Malik, this doesn't have to be a big deal. Just tell me the truth. We can work through this together." "I told you the truth." "Then where is he?" Malik didn't answer. Because what could he say? That his father was probably in a classified meeting? That he couldn't just leave whenever he wanted? That the world didn't stop because a teacher didn't believe his son? Mr. Henderson waited for a response that never came. "All right," he said quietly. "Stay here." He went back into his office. 1:05. Mrs. Patterson walked down the hallway. She had a stack of papers in her arms. She saw Malik. She stopped. For just a second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt. Not quite. But something close. Then it was gone. She kept walking. And Malik realized something in that moment. She wasn't going to apologize. Even if she was wrong. Even if his father walked through those doors in full uniform. She'd find a way to make it not her fault. Because admitting you were wrong about a kid? That's harder than doubling down. 1:15. Shanice appeared at the end of the hallway. She looked both ways. Then walked toward him. She sat down on the bench. Not too close. But close enough. "Hey. Hey." They didn't say anything for a minute. Then Shanice spoke. "I tried to tell her." "I know." She wouldn't listen. They never do. Shanice looked at him. "Your dad's really a general, isn't he?" Malik nodded. "I believe you." "Thanks." Another pause. "Why won't he just come here and prove it?" Malik's voice was barely a whisper. "Because he shouldn't have to." Shanice didn't understand. But she didn't push. They sat there together. Not talking. Just existing in the same space. And for a moment, Malik felt a little less alone. Then a voice came from down the hall. "Shanice." "Mrs. Patterson. You need to be in the cafeteria?" "I was just." "Now." Shanice stood up slowly. She looked at Malik one more time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then she left. And Malik was alone again. 1:30. The bell rang. Lunch was over. Kids poured back into the hallways. They walked past him. Some stared. Some whispered. Some pretended he didn't exist. And in all of it, not one adult stepped in to say, "Maybe we got this wrong." Not one person asked if he was okay. They'd all made up their minds. The case was closed. Malik leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. He didn't cry. He just waited. Because somewhere out there, his father was coming. And when he arrived, every single person in this building was going to remember this day. Not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't say. 1:43. The sound of helicopter blades returned. Closer this time. Malik opened his eyes. And he smiled. 2 o'clock came and went. No general. No proof. Nothing. In the staff lounge, 3 teachers sat around a table. Coffee cups. Half-eaten sandwiches. And whispers. "I heard he's still out there," one said. "Poor kid." "Poor kid?" "He lied to the entire class." "We don't know that for sure." "Oh, come on. It's been hours." If his dad was really some big-shot general, he'd be here by now. The third teacher, younger than the others, stirred her coffee slowly. "Maybe he's just stuck at work." The first teacher laughed. "Not mean. Just tired." "Stuck at work for 6 hours? While his kid sits in the hallway." "No parent does that. Not if they actually care." The younger teacher didn't respond. She wanted to believe Malik. But doubt is contagious. And when enough people stop believing something, it becomes easier to let it go. In the principal's office, Mr. Henderson sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen. He'd sent an email to the district office. Subject line, student incident requiring parental conference. He'd written it carefully, professionally. No accusations, just facts, or what he thought were facts. Student made claims about parent's occupation that appear inconsistent with records on file. Multiple attempts to reach parent unsuccessful. Recommend follow-up meeting to address pattern of attention-seeking behavior. He reread it twice. Then he hit send. And the moment he did, something settled in his chest. Relief. Because now it wasn't just his decision. It was documented. Official. If anyone ever asked why he didn't believe Malik, he could point to this email and say he followed protocol. He leaned back in his chair. Outside his office, Malik was still waiting. But in Mr. Henderson's mind, the waiting was over. 2:15. Mrs. Patterson stood in front of her class again. The afternoon lesson had started, but no one was paying attention. All eyes kept drifting to Malik's empty seat. She'd had enough. All right, she said, setting down her marker. Let's address the elephant in the room. The class went silent. You're all wondering about Malik. You're all waiting for some big moment where someone proves me wrong. She walked to the center of the room. It's not coming. A few kids shifted uncomfortably. I know you want to believe him. I know some of you think I'm being unfair. But here's what I need you to understand. She gestured toward the clock. It's been over 5 hours. If Malik's father was really a 4-star general, do you think he'd let his son sit in that hallway for 5 hours? No one answered. Exactly. Because no parent would, no matter how important their job is. She crossed her arms. So what does that tell us? A boy in the back raised his hand slowly. That maybe he's not coming? Mrs. Patterson nodded. Right. And if he's not coming, what does that mean about Malik's story? The room stayed quiet. It means he made it up. It means he wanted to feel special. And instead of just admitting it, he dug himself deeper. She walked back to the board. This is a lesson for all of you. The truth always comes out. Always. And the longer you try to hide from it, the worse it gets. She picked up her marker. So when Malik comes back tomorrow, I expect all of you to treat him with respect. But I also expect all of you to remember this moment. She wrote on the board, honesty is non-negotiable. Because if you lie once, people will never fully trust you again. She turned back to the class. And that's the real punishment. Outside, in the hallway, Malik heard every word. The walls were thin. Her voice carried. He sat there, absorbing it all. And for the first time that day, he felt something break inside him. Not belief. Not truth. Hope. Because even if his father showed up now, even if he walked through those doors in full uniform with medals and stars and proof, it wouldn't erase this. It wouldn't erase the fact that for 6 hours, no one believed him. It wouldn't erase the lesson he'd just learned. That the truth doesn't matter if no one's willing to see it. 2:28. A secretary walked past. She glanced at him. Then she looked away. Because in her mind, the story was over. The kid lied. The system worked. Case closed. But outside, in the parking lot, the first black SUV pulled in. No sirens. No announcement. Just quiet, controlled power. And inside that vehicle sat a man who'd spent the last 4 hours on a plane. A man who'd cut short a meeting with the Joint Chiefs. A man who'd made one phone call that rerouted his entire day. Because someone had called his son a liar. And that was unacceptable. The first person to notice was a student looking out the window during math class. She saw the SUVs. Black, tinted windows. Moving in formation. Not like normal cars. Like they owned the road. She tapped the kid next to her. Look. Within seconds, half the class was at the windows. The teacher tried to regain control. Seats. Now. But even she glanced outside. And when she did, her voice trailed off. Because those weren't regular vehicles. The SUVs pulled into the front circle. Smooth. Precise. They stopped in perfect alignment. Doors opened. 4 men stepped out first. Dark suits. Earpieces. Sunglasses. They didn't look around casually. They scanned, like they were securing a perimeter. One of them spoke into his wrist. Then they moved to the sides of the vehicles and waited. In the classroom, kids pressed against the glass. Who are they? Is that the FBI? Why are they here? The teacher didn't answer, because she didn't know. The second SUV's rear door opened. A man stepped out. Not rushed, not dramatic, just deliberate. Boots hit the pavement first. Then the uniform came into view. Dark green, crisp, perfectly fitted. Ribbons lined his chest in rows. Combat infantry badge. Ranger tab. Airborne wings. Bronze star. Silver star. Purple heart. And on his shoulders, 4 silver stars. The hallway outside Mrs. Patterson's classroom had gone completely silent, because word travels fast in a school, and by now, everyone knew what those stars meant. Inside the classroom, Mrs. Patterson was still teaching. She'd moved on from the Malik situation. In her mind, it was over. She was writing on the board when a student spoke up. Mrs. Patterson, not now. But, I said not now. Another student stood up. Mrs. Patterson, you need to see this. She turned around, annoyed. What is so important that? She saw their faces. Every single student was staring at the door. She followed their eyes. The hallway was filling with people. Teachers, staff, students from other classes, all moving toward the front entrance. Not running, but walking quickly, like they didn't want to miss something. Mrs. Patterson's stomach tightened. She set down the marker and walked to the door. Stay in your seats, she said. But the moment she stepped into the hallway, 3 students got up and followed. Then 5 more. Then the whole class. Because whatever was happening, it was bigger than a math lesson. At the front entrance, Mr. Henderson stood frozen. He'd walked outside to see who the visitors were, and now he couldn't move. The general stood 10 feet away. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of presence that didn't need to announce itself. He wasn't angry. His face was calm, but his eyes said everything. One of the men in suits approached Mr. Henderson. Principal Henderson? Yes. General Brooks is here to see his son. Mr. Henderson's mouth went dry. His son? Malik Brooks. The name hit like a punch. Mr. Henderson tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. There's been a misunderstanding, the general said, his voice low but clear. He stepped forward. No, there hasn't. He stopped a few feet from Mr. Henderson. My son told the truth, and no one believed him. Mr. Henderson opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Behind him, Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway. She saw the uniform, the stars, the ribbons. Her face went pale. The general's eyes shifted to her. You must be Mrs. Patterson. She nodded slowly. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. You tore up my son's paper. It wasn't a question. She tried to respond. Her voice cracked. I didn't know. You didn't ask. Silence. The general looked back at Mr. Henderson. Where is he? Inside. By my office. The general nodded once. Then he walked past them. Not aggressive. Not rushed. Just a father going to find his son. The 2 men in suits stayed outside. But the message was clear. This wasn't a visit. This was a reckoning. Mrs. Patterson stood in the doorway, unable to move. Students lined the hallways, watching, whispering, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she realized something. She'd spent 6 hours teaching a lesson about honesty. But the real lesson, the one she'd just learned, was that assumptions are dangerous, and authority without humility is just arrogance in disguise. Inside, Malik sat on the bench. He heard the footsteps before he saw him. Heavy, steady, familiar. He looked up, and there he was, 4 stars on his shoulders, pride on his face. His father. The general stopped in front of him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the general knelt down. Eye level, and in a voice only Malik could hear, he said, I'm sorry I'm late. Malik's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, from relief. Because finally, someone believed him. The general stood up slowly. He kept one hand on Malik's shoulder. Then he turned toward Mr. Henderson's office. The principal was standing in the doorway. Frozen. Mr. Henderson, the general said calmly. We need to talk. It wasn't a request. Mr. Henderson nodded and stepped aside. The general walked into the office. Malik followed. For a moment, no one else moved. Then Mrs. Patterson took a step forward. One of the men in suits appeared beside her, not blocking her, just present. Ma'am, the general requested a private conversation. She stopped. Inside the office, Mr. Henderson sat behind his desk. The general didn't sit. He stood in front of the desk, arms at his sides. Calm, controlled. But the air in the room felt heavy. Do you want to explain, the general said quietly, why my son spent 6 hours being called a liar? Mr. Henderson's hands trembled slightly. Sir, we had no way of knowing. You had a way. You could have asked. We tried calling. I was in a classified briefing. My phone was off. That doesn't mean my son was lying. Mr. Henderson swallowed hard. The file said. The file is intentionally vague. For security reasons. The general's voice never rose. But every word landed like a stone. You looked at his shoes and decided he didn't deserve to be believed. Mr. Henderson opened his mouth, closed it. The general continued. You looked at where he lives, how he dresses, and you made a decision about who he could be. That's exactly what happened. Silence. The general leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you something. If a student came in here and said their parent was a doctor, would you call them a liar? No. If they said their parent was a lawyer? No. Then why my son? Mr. Henderson didn't have an answer. The general straightened. I'm not here to ruin your career, Mr. Henderson. I'm here to make sure this never happens again. He glanced at Malik. Not to him. Not to any kid. Mr. Henderson nodded quickly. Of course. Absolutely. You'll issue a formal apology. Today. In front of the same students who heard him be called a liar. Yes, sir. You'll review your policies on how you handle claims you can't immediately verify. Yes, sir. The general's eyes stayed locked on him. And you'll remember that just because something seems unlikely doesn't mean it's untrue. Mr. Henderson nodded. The general turned toward the door. Then he stopped. One more thing. Yes. Mrs. Patterson. Mr. Henderson's face paled. She's been teaching here for. I don't care how long she's been teaching. She humiliated my son. Publicly. He looked back at Mr. Henderson. What are you going to do about it? The principal hesitated. I'll speak with her. Not good enough. The general's tone stayed even, but the weight behind it doubled. She tore up his paper. She called him a liar in front of his peers. She made him feel like his truth didn't matter. He stepped closer. If that's how she treats one student, how many others has she done this to? Mr. Henderson had no answer. You'll address it. Properly. Or I will. Understood. The general opened the door. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Teachers, students, staff, all watching. He walked past them. Malik at his side. Mrs. Patterson stood near the wall, arms crossed, face tight. The general stopped in front of her. She looked up at him, and for the first time all day, she had nothing to say. Mrs. Patterson, he said quietly. My son told the truth. You didn't believe him. She tried to speak. Failed. You didn't ask questions. You didn't verify. You just decided. Her eyes dropped to the floor. I want you to think about something. She looked up. How many other kids have you done this to? How many other truths have you dismissed because they didn't fit what you expected? Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. The general didn't wait for an answer. He placed his hand on Malik's shoulder and guided him toward the exit. As they walked, students stepped aside. Not out of fear, out of respect. At the door, the general stopped. He turned back to face the crowd. My son is a good kid. He tells the truth. And from now on, when he speaks, I expect people to listen. He looked directly at Mrs. Patterson. All of you. Then he walked out. The door closed behind them, and the hallway stayed silent. Because everyone had just witnessed something they'd never forget. Not a man seeking revenge, but a father demanding dignity for his child. Mrs. Patterson stood frozen. Her hands were shaking, not from anger, from shame. Because deep down, she knew he was right. She'd spent 26 years teaching. But today, she was the one who learned. And the lesson was devastating. In the parking lot, Malik climbed into the SUV. His father climbed in beside him. The door closed. And as they drove away, Malik finally exhaled. "Dad, yeah. Thanks for coming." The general looked at his son and smiled. "Always." The next morning, Malik walked into school. Same hallway, same lockers, same building. But everything felt different. Kids stared, not with mockery, with something else. Respect, curiosity, maybe even a little awe. A few nodded at him as he passed. One kid from another class stopped him. "That was your dad yesterday?" Malik nodded. "That's sick, man." He kept walking. At his locker, Shanice was waiting. Hey. She smiled. "A real one. I knew you weren't lying." "I know you did." They walked to class together. When Malik entered the room, the entire class went silent. Mrs. Patterson stood at the front. She looked different, smaller somehow. Her eyes met his for just a second. Then she looked away. "Take your seat, Malik," she said quietly. He did. But before the lesson started, the intercom crackled. "Mrs. Patterson, please send Malik Brooks to the office." The class stirred. Malik grabbed his bag and stood up. He wasn't nervous this time. When he walked into the office, Mr. Henderson was there. So was the superintendent. And his father. "Malik," Mr. Henderson said. "Please sit." He sat. The superintendent leaned forward. "Malik, on behalf of the entire district, I want to apologize for what happened to you." Malik didn't respond. "We failed you, and we're taking steps to make sure it doesn't happen again." She slid a paper across the desk. "We're implementing new training for all staff. On implicit bias. On verification procedures. On how to handle situations where a student's claim seems unusual." Malik looked at the paper but didn't pick it up. "We're also issuing a formal apology. It'll be read during the morning announcements." The general spoke for the first time. "And Mrs. Patterson?" The superintendent hesitated. "She's been placed on administrative leave pending a full review." Malik's head snapped up. "Wait, you're firing her?" "Not firing. Reviewing." Malik looked at his father. "Dad, I don't want her to lose her job." The room went quiet. The general studied his son. "Why not?" "Because..." Malik paused. "Because she was wrong. But I don't think she meant to hurt me." He looked at the superintendent. "She just didn't understand. Maybe she needs to learn. But that doesn't mean her whole career should be over." The superintendent exchanged a glance with Mr. Henderson. "That's very mature of you, Malik. I just want people to believe kids. That's all." The general placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Pride in his eyes. "Then that's what we'll push for." The meeting ended 10 minutes later. As Malik walked back to class, the morning announcements began. The principal's voice came through the speakers. "Good morning, everyone. I need to address something that happened yesterday." Every classroom stopped. A student in our school told the truth, and we didn't believe him. You could hear a pin drop. We made assumptions based on what we thought was possible instead of verifying the facts. And because of that, we hurt someone who deserved better. A pause. "Malik Brooks, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Your father is a 4-star general. You told the truth, and we should have believed you." Another pause. "To all students, your voice matters. Your truth matters. And from now on, we'll do better." The intercom clicked off. Malik walked back into Mrs. Patterson's classroom. Every eye was on him. Mrs. Patterson stood at the front, hands clasped together. "Malik," she said, her voice shaky. "I owe you an apology." The class was silent. "I was wrong. I made assumptions I had no right to make. And I hurt you." She took a breath. "I'm sorry." Malik looked at her. Then he nodded. "Thank you." He sat down. The class slowly returned to normal. But something had shifted. Not just in that room. In the whole school. Because word had spread. A kid told the truth. And a general made sure everyone knew it. 3 weeks later, new training programs rolled out across the district. Posters went up in hallways. Listen first. Assume nothing. Teachers talked differently. Asked more questions. Made fewer judgments. And Malik? He went back to being a regular kid. Same shoes, same backpack, but different posture. Because now, when he spoke, people listened. Not because his father was a general, but because they'd learned what happens when you don't. One afternoon, Mrs. Patterson stopped him after class. "Malik, can I talk to you for a second?" He stayed behind. "I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For not wanting me fired. You could have. You had every right." Malik shrugged. "Everyone makes mistakes." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Not everyone forgives them." He picked up his bag. "My dad taught me something. He said the strongest thing you can do isn't proving you're right." He looked at her. "It's giving people a chance to do better." He walked out, and Mrs. Patterson stood there, alone, realizing she'd just been taught by the same kid she'd tried to teach. That night, Malik sat at the dinner table with his father. "How was school?" "Good. Just good." Malik smiled. "Yeah, just good." And for the first time in weeks, that was enough. Because the story was over. But the lesson? That would last forever. The end.